Yeah, we're not doctors or giving any medical advice. This show is intended for educational purposes only, and you should talk to your doctor about any medical issues. Now, let's get at it.
Welcome to Chat the Fat, where nutrition authors Nissa Gron and TC Hale are going to break down common low-carb mistakes. Let's chat all things low-carb, keto, digestion, and more so you can maximize your results.
Hello, good people, and welcome back to Chat the Fat. This is episode 5. I'm TC Hale, and I'm here with Nissa Gron. And while I'm here with Nissa Gron is going to say words. Do you know what words you've selected?
I have selected to say hello.
Oh, good selection. Good selection.
Yeah.
What's happening?
Not much. I am at home with 2 kids this week that are on spring break, and it's raining outside, and my husband's traveling, so I am living my best mom life this week.
Wow, for reals.
Yeah.
You can't just kick them out in the yard like they used to when I was a kid. Go play in the rain, okay? So I guess we'll just have to do stuff. And when they come barging in, asking for something new to entertain them, we'll try to do our best.
Yeah, you might hear some screaming and yelling downstairs. We'll see.
Okay. You might hear screaming and yelling here too, but I don't have any kids here right now. So
Okay.
that must be something different. Maybe it's the lawn guys. So what are we talking about today?
So this week we are going to talk about protein on keto.
Well, that's a big one.
Yeah, it's definitely a controversial topic in the keto world because you have different experts telling you different things. So you have one expert over here that tells you that you need to cut the amount of protein that you eat. And then you have another expert on the other side that's telling you to eat more protein in order to find keto success. So we are here to discuss the topic and try to figure out which expert is right. It gets so confusing with so many people saying so many different things.
Right. We probably just have to look at their bank balance to see which one's right, because that's how a lot of people determine who's right is who has the prettiest car. I don't know.
So is it like who can afford the higher quality protein?
Yeah, that might be what it is. So
Awesome.
We probably have a lot of things, different angles and stuff like that to kind of dig in today. So strap it in. Let's do it.
All right. So for those people who think protein isn't as important because keto is a moderate protein diet, protein is still an important macronutrient to consume. And one of the reasons is your body needs protein in order to build and repair your tissues. And it's also an important building block of things like bones, muscles, your cartilage, and even your skin and blood.
Like all that stuff is stuff that you want.
Yes,
Like
important.
you want all that stuff functioning correctly. And it's, when we look at animal protein, and we'll talk about some vegan things and stuff in today's show too, but it's not just that you're looking for protein and B12. Like a lot of people will think, oh, you're gonna get a B12 deficiency if you don't eat animal protein. It's not just that. It's all of these amino acids and cofactors that are found in this animal protein that your body needs for a lot of functions. So protein can be a really big deal. Even if you're not eating a lot of it, what you are getting can be crucial.
Yeah, and I think, so a lot of people know keto as a moderate protein diet, but I think there are quite a few people out there that actually need to add more protein to their keto diet. A lot of those, and I'm speaking from my own experience here, are women who are coming from a lower calorie dieting world, like Weight Watchers is one that I followed for a long time. And I think that a lot of them might need to add more protein because so many low-calorie plans are actually focused on lower fat foods like pasta and bread, which you don't find a lot of protein in.
Yeah, and you say women from that low-calorie dieting world. Anybody could do that, but I guess that was much more popular with women. And I know you were in that world for a long time. When you see a woman that you're just like, oh yeah, I know her. She's from the low-calorie gang.
I see them on the message boards and I try to talk them out of it because I just know how sad of a life that is.
Right.
Are there a lot of men that follow low-calorie diets? I know it's pushed so much on women.
I still do talk to people a lot that maybe they haven't read any of my books or anything like that. They don't know what we do. And they'll say, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm watching my calories and I'd smack them, But I still hear that a lot from both men and women.
Okay, I guess I just talked to more women.
Right.
um, but other people that might need to focus on getting more protein is maybe if they're feeling hunger on a keto diet, eating too low of protein could sometimes be the culprit because as many former glucose burners know that when you eat a lot of carbs, those can burn up like kindling, whereas when you're eating more protein, that can give you a sustained fuel, more like a slow burning log.
Yeah.
Um,
So it just, it's the fuel is not just gone. Like when you're doing carbs, it just kind of rip it out, and protein allows us to just have sustained fuel for a longer period of time. So that can be important. And, you're talking about moderate protein diet when we look at keto, but even though a lot of people have to reduce their protein when they start trying to get into ketosis, there's a lot of people who are coming from some kind of horrible crap diet, a standard American diet where they're eating out of a vending machine. They may actually be increasing the amount of protein that they're eating when they start eating more real food.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I've been on both sides of that because I fluctuated a lot from the low calorie diets to the crap diets. And yeah, a lot of those were a lot of higher fat processed foods, but it was the wrong kind of fat. So they were higher fat and higher carbs, and maybe a few pieces of chicken thrown in that was really heavily processed.
Right, right. So it was like rubber chicken, kind of fake chickeny kind of
Yeah.
stuff, um, where you really don't know what's in that stuff.
No, I'm really grossed out by the fact that I ate that.
Well, the other thing is like a person could be eating protein, but if they're not digesting it, they're not really getting protein. And they're not only not getting those nutrients that they need, but the protein is not digesting well, and then it's causing other problems in the body. So what are some of the signs that we look at to know if we're digesting protein or not?
So I definitely knew that you were going to bring digestion into this. So,
Because I was saying words. Anytime I
yes.
say words, I'm pretty much talking about poop. So we knew that was coming.
Yes. So, some of the signs that people can look for that they're not digesting protein well might include things like constipation, which I know is huge when a lot of people start keto. Also, heartburn or reflux, things like low blood pressure, burping, bloating, nausea, and food just sitting in your stomach where it feels like a rock that's not moving.
Like for 6 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're that person that eats a steak and they're like not hungry until Thursday, that's usually a problem of not enough acid to break that food down. So it's just kind of sitting there rotting and fermenting. And a lot of those symptoms that you just listed, well, people will say, well, everybody burps, everybody's bloating. All my friends bloat after they eat. We have a gang. It's the bloating gang. And they just think that that's how it is. But just because it's common doesn't mean that that's how it's supposed to be. So all those signs are good indications that you're not breaking down protein correctly.
Can you actually explain bloating? Because I'm sure I bloated forever and I didn't even really know what that meant. I just knew my friends would say they were bloated and I just said, okay, not me, but I was.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know. And a question that we usually like to ask, especially women, because women pay attention to this, where guys are kind of clueless. I don't know if you knew about that.
No, I guess I was too, but yeah.
No, but women at least are conscious of what's going on. But we ask a lot of women, like, are your clothes tighter at night than when you put them on in the morning? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, then that person is really bloating. But bloating is also something that you can just experience. Like a lot of people will feel it in their stomach where they'll just feel bloated after a meal. And what that is either bacteria in the stomach that's usually only there in a situation where a person is not making enough stomach acid, because if they're making enough stomach acid, it would wipe out those invaders. But that bacteria, the waste from the bacteria is very alkaline. And then when the small amount of stomach acid you have mixes with that alkaline, it creates this fizzy mess and all these gases. And then the gases expand, which causes your stomach or intestines to expand. And then you start to feel bloated. And the same thing can happen if that food is just sitting there and not breaking down and it's rotting and fermenting. Those things create those gases too that causes things to expand, and we feel bloated.
So it's not just you're eating and you're getting fatter throughout the day, so your clothes are getting tighter.
Right. It's not like that. And
Okay.
I've seen a lot of women especially where, and they'll tell you this, they're like, I look pregnant after I eat.
Yeah.
And they really do. They really get like this huge bulge of just their stomach expanding so much. And that's some severe bloating. That's advanced.
Yeah, I actually had a former roommate who was tiny, like size 0, tiny, never had to worry about what she ate, but she would look pregnant. And I used to joke with her and call it her food baby
Right.
because she definitely got a lot of bloating.
Yeah. Right.
So I know that, people maybe they're panicking because they experience some of those symptoms that we listed, and maybe they just think they're screwed and they can't digest protein. So now they can't do keto, but there definitely is some help for them out there that can help their bodies better digest protein. And I know one of the steps I had to take was adding the biotin HCl supplement to my program in order to help aid my stomach acid production so I could break down that protein better. Are there any other suggestions beyond that?
That's what I like people to do because that's what works the best. But there are people out there who they can improve their stomach acid by just like adding sea salt, because stomach acid is hydrochloric acid, or HCl, and that chloric, that's from chloride. So a lot of people don't have enough chloride in the system for their body to make hydrochloric acid. So when they add sea salt to their diet, that has chloride in there, and now they just gave their body what it needs to make HCl. And I've seen people change their whole life just by adding sea salt. But in most cases, that's not enough. And there are other issues that are problematic that's not allowing the body to make enough HCl. So I like to see people use HCl at least temporarily, improve those symptoms that you're having, and then try reducing the amount that you're using and see if the symptoms stay away. And that would be telling you that, okay, you now kind of synthesize digestion enough so that your body can actually break down the food that you're eating, pull the minerals and nutrients out of that food, and now your body's getting what it needs so that it can make its own HCl, and then you don't need to use the supplements anymore. But other people that may need just a little bit of a boost, maybe that's not so severe, they could use a little apple cider vinegar at the end of a meal, and that can help acidify the stomach just a little bit. And then sea salt might help them make more. But beyond those things that could help somebody who just needs a little bit of help, I like to see people use HCl and go through the steps that we talk about and doing that. And we talked about that in the digestion, where we talked about an episode where we talked about more digestive stuff, didn't we? I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm sure we've talked about it. But with the apple cider vinegar, how do you suggest people take that? Because I've taken it in teaspoon form where you just throw it back, and that's not any fun. It burns.
Sarah, when she was pregnant and we didn't want to use as much HCl, she was using some apple cider vinegar, and we just got like shot glasses, and she would just be like, all right, it's disgusting shot time, and just shoot it back. And people
That's
sometimes
be rough
will be,
when you're pregnant.
right. And, it's not delicious, but that's why I like to see people use HCl instead, because it's just a capsule and you just take it and there's no drama to it.
There's no burning.
Right.
So while we're talking about HCl, probably the biggest question that you're asked when people are taking HCl is, how long do you have to take it? Is it you just take it for a month and then you're done?
Well, that's the thing, is that there's a lot of reasons that maybe you're not making enough stomach acid, and especially if you're a low blood pressure person, indicating that there's not enough mineral in there that the body might need to produce HCl. I've seen people take HCl for a month or two, fix digestion enough to where their body's making their own HCl, and then they just kind of taper off of it, and all those symptoms stay away, and it's a great story, and woohoo. But I would say at least half of the people that need HCl need it for much longer than that. And especially if you've ever been on any type of acid reflux medication like a PPI, where that kind of turns off stomach acid. I've read things that say that when you take those, it can take over a year before your body will start making its own stomach acid again. If you have some type of infection, some type of bacterial overgrowth in your stomach, especially like H. pylori or something, that they basically eat hydrogen as a food source for them. And now your body doesn't have any hydrogen to make hydrochloric acid. So there's a lot of reasons that somebody may not be making enough HCl, but you can just kind of test things out. And once your symptoms improve, whether we're talking about constipation or burping or bloating or some of these other things, especially reflux, once those improve, you can start reducing the dose that you're using and see if it stays away. And if it does, you can reduce it a little bit more. And if the symptoms come back, then you can say, okay, I'm just not ready yet. My body's not making enough HCl. I can complain that, I have to take this capsule. But you just fixed a major health problem that's been going on probably for decades. Just allow your body to get the help that it needs and keep doing it for as long as you need it.
So have you ever come across anyone that maybe needs a supplement with HCl permanently?
I don't know that's, I haven't known anybody permanently yet, but, I think that there are some people who are damaged enough that they're going to need it for a while. I have talked to people who have been using it for years, and they find that sometimes they can go off of it, but then things like reflux and stuff start creeping back. So they may use it just when they need it, but there's no way to know what's going to happen. So people ask me all the time, and I'm like, I'm not a wizard. I don't know how long you're going to need it. You're just going to have to pay attention. Oh no. You have to pay attention to your life and your health and how you're feeling. And then you'll be able to figure it out.
So I might be your unicorn because I actually took it for about a year the first time around, and then I got pregnant again and went off it and had really bad heartburn while I was pregnant. And I still take it. I actually had some health testing done, and they picked up very low stomach acid in those tests.
And, especially if someone has a hiatal hernia, they may need to take it for a little bit longer too. I've experienced that myself because the hernia can restrict the ability for that LAS valve to close properly, and increasing the acid can help that close a little tighter. So there's a variety of reasons that someone may need it longer. But if you're a person that needs it longer and you're in a support group and you're seeing people that are like, woohoo, I only had to take it 3 weeks, I'm a ninja. Don't yell at them or something. That's just how it works out. Maybe
don't show off.
maybe they have funny looking eyebrows or something. You don't know. There might be something that they don't like too. So just don't worry about it. But everybody's going to be different. But if you pay attention to what's going on, you can figure out what's going to be required or best for you.
So what about the people that come into keto and they're looking forward to this moderate protein plan, and maybe they're getting some of the symptoms we talked about, but they don't really want to go the supplement route, and maybe sea salt and ACV isn't really enough for them? If they're not digesting the protein they eat well, do you think that they'll eventually fail on a keto plan?
Well, they have a better chance of it because if you're not breaking down protein correctly, you don't get extra points just because you're eating it. You're not going to get a high score because you're fitting your macros right. It's all about giving your body what your body actually needs. And your body doesn't need chicken. It needs amino acids and all those cofactors that chicken is broken down into. And it uses those amino acids as building blocks. So if you're not getting those, then your body is going to start screaming for other things that can kind of fill in the blanks that aren't coming in correctly. And it might scream for more carbs, and the body might start breaking itself down. All these other problems that can happen when you're not getting the protein that your body needs. And some of those issues can lead to either bad behavior, because if you're on keto and you find yourself knee deep in a box of Twinkies, guess what? Your keto diet is not going to be successful.
No, you're probably going to gain weight back.
Right. It's going to be amazing how much weight you gain when you're having 7 fat bombs along with 7 Twinkies. It's not a good combination. So some issues that can come about from a lack of protein can cause problems in the body, and some of them can cause problems to behavior as far as what a person is consuming and their, quote unquote willpower. It's usually not about willpower like people think. It's more about, is your body getting what it really needs or not?
So obviously from everything you just talked about, it seems like it's really important to have the ability to break down protein in order to find success. Why do you think other keto experts aren't really talking about this?
Well, some of them want to be wrong, and I think that's fine. I think it's
Yeah.
fine for them to be wrong, but more of them are now, and more like even Jimmy Moore in his new book Real Food Keto, he talks about the importance of stomach acid, and I think that what people ask me this a lot because there's other books where people talk about it, but they just kind of mention it, and I won't shut up about it.
Yeah.
Because I see people that when you just kind of mention it, they're like, oh, that's interesting, but I'm not going to do that. Um, and so I see a lot of people's books, like, the Dallas and Melissa Hartwig or in my movie, they're friends of mine. And I've talked to them about the fact that, in their book, they mention digestion and the importance of HCl and all those things. And then they go on and on about all these foods that can cause sensitivities. And in my book, I talk for like half a chapter about foods that cause sensitivities, and I go on and on about digestion. So a lot of people are covering these things. It's just some people kind of latch onto one and talk about it a lot more. So it's becoming more popular, and people are understanding the importance because they're seeing that why is this diet not working for this group of people over here when it works so well for other people? And a lot of times it's just because they can't digest the food. If you can't digest the food, it doesn't matter which diet that you're using.
Yeah, and I think that I've talked about before how I'm a little bit of a podcast junkie. And so I've listened to a lot of different keto podcasts. And I first heard, besides you talk about it, I heard Shawn Miner mention it in one of her podcasts. And I got really excited because I've never really heard anyone else talk about it.
Right. Yeah, it's so funny when people will send me an article and they're like, look, read this article. This person is saying exactly what you're saying. Why do I need to read the article then? I already knew that stuff.
So another question that people have when it comes to protein is they want to know how much protein should we consume on a keto diet, which obviously isn't an easy question to answer because it will be different for each person. I think it can depend a lot on a person's activity level as well as also their level of insulin resistance. Do you think that anything else comes into play?
Well, I think, it can depend on even what their current muscle mass is, because muscle can be basically expensive. It kind of burns fuel a lot as it's going. And there's been times where I've had like 30 pounds more of muscle on my body, and I had to eat nonstop just to keep that available. So that could make a difference. And insulin resistance is a big part of it because even if a person is removing all of their carbs, their insulin resistance can still dictate how much protein is going to affect how easily they get in and out of ketosis. So if a person is more insulin resistant, they're going to find that they probably can't eat as much protein as someone who isn't. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's because of that big gluconeogenesis word.
Right. Because if you're turning a lot of protein into glucose, then it's going to depend a lot on how much glucose can your body take before you're knocked out of ketosis.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a big word.
It's all fun. Supercalifragilistic something.
So I think, even though you say that it's different for each person and there's so many variables that go into it, I think we can give some general numbers to give people a starting place. I see a lot of women that thrive somewhere between 60 to 80 grams each day, while men can often eat a little bit more, so maybe somewhere between like 70 to 90 grams per day. But again, that's just a very general starting point, and it definitely needs to be adjusted based on the individual. I think personally, I feel like it's best to consume protein to a level where you don't feel weak and shaky, but you're also not just eating all the protein just because someone told you to eat a lot of protein.
Right. And especially people who lift weights, they're all going to hear, oh, you have to eat all the protein. That's going to be in their brain. And they don't really need to eat all of it. They just need to eat enough that their body's getting those amino acids and they're available. And they may need to eat a little bit more than someone who's not lifting weights and building muscle, but you don't have to go nuts with it. Another thing that I like to see people do is don't shoot for 60 to 80 or whatever number you feeling is good for you for the day, I like to see the protein spread out. I don't, all of it in one meal is going to cause a lot more problems with gluconeogenesis and having more protein in the body can use at that time. And, what is the body going to do with it? It's going to do other things that create problems. So if you can spread that out throughout the day and just give your body a little bit at a time, that seems to get better results.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know for those people who are lifting weights that you said that they need to eat a little bit more protein, and that really means just a little bit more protein. It doesn't mean like they need double their protein because they're lifting weights.
Right, and that could also go along with, do they need a little more carbs? We talk about sometimes those things are increased when someone's active. Well, if you're lifting weights, that's an activity.
Yeah. So what about the people, there's different factions of keto dieters out there, and there are those people who basically count their carbs, they keep them under 20 grams of carbs, and then they find success. So they don't count how much fat they eat, they don't monitor their protein. So if these people are finding success just by keeping their carbs low, then why should anyone even bother to monitor their protein?
Well, those people are a bad example. And they're just showing off, because you're definitely going to find those folks who their physiology is already in a place that leans toward succeeding in keto. So they just need to kind of step on the gas and all of a sudden they're crushing it and everything is going well. And the only thing that was keeping them out of ketosis was the carbs they were eating pretty much. But the majority of people are not going to be in that boat. And the majority of people are going to be jealous of the people in that boat.
I would also like to point out, and maybe this isn't very PC, but I have a platform now that a lot of those people are mean. They are in the keto message boards. And if you don't agree with them, if you say that you need to do anything beyond count to 20 carbs and you don't find success, they will tell you you're wrong. Even if you're someone like me who's lost more than 100 pounds, they will still say that you are wrong.
Right. And they have a button for that. It's called delete.
Yes, delete, but they have stalked me. They have followed me over to my page and stalked me to the point where my very large husband was looking up where they live just in case he needed to pay him a visit.
That's awesome. I can't wait to have that episode where we talk about a visit that Jason paid us on.
Yes. So I'm personally one of those people that, especially when I started, I never needed to count protein macros. And I never really needed to count them until I got closer to my goal. And I think part of that is because I did come from that low calorie dieting world where I just didn't prefer to eat a lot of protein. So I guess maybe I just was never really in danger of overdoing the protein.
Right. And I never tracked the macros on my protein either, but I can notice that if my ketones are lower or if maybe I'm adding a little weight or something like that, that I can think back and be like, oh yeah, I've been having a little more protein with that and that. And as soon as I lower the protein, then bam, I'm right back to where I was.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, myself included, maybe if they're new to keto or just starting out or they're trying to revamp their program and find success, that, the first step is probably to focus on keeping your carbs low, like those mean people say. But then the next step, you definitely want to make sure that you're eating enough fat, because keeping your fat too low can keep you out of ketosis. And maybe after that, if you still find yourself in a stall, then definitely, zero in on your protein and make sure that you're not eating too much, because that can definitely be one of the roadblocks to not finding success. So I think that's a good spot to actually pay attention to how much protein you're consuming.
And I think also in a minute, we'll get to this in a minute, but we'll talk about the type of protein that you're eating could be a factor as well.
Yeah. And so one of the types of protein that people eat, and I get this question a lot, is about protein powders. So they want to know, what are the different kinds of protein powders that are okay to consume with a keto diet? And should they even be consuming these protein powders in the first place? So I can give a quick list of some of the protein powders that you might be looking at. So when you get those big jugs at Costco or wherever you go, some of the protein powders you might see include whey protein, casein, collagen, egg protein, pea protein, hemp protein, or brown rice protein. Do you think that any of these are preferable to others, or are there any that you should avoid?
First of all, I'm not super excited about protein powders anymore. We can talk about that in a second. But, one that I really like is whole egg protein powder, but it's almost impossible to find because it's a little bit gross. That when you put the when you put the yolk in there, when we made our protein powder, we tried to make it with a lot of whole egg because we wanted all those fats, and the yolk is the best part of the egg. That's where all the great nutrition is. So we wanted to put that in our protein powder, but it was a little bit gaggable for most people that tried it. I didn't mind it, but so a lot of the other ones, especially whey, can be very problematic because it can be estrogenic, and a lot of the other ones, they're just not my favorite. But before we kind of go into that, let's talk about some of the pros and cons of protein powders in the first place. And is there one that you like the most, or that you hear people doing the best with? Because did we even say collagen?
Yeah, collagen was on the list.
Okay, well, that's the one that I like. That's the one that I use when I'm gonna do anything. But usually when I do it, I don't do like a shake. I'm like about to have a meal or something, and I'll just put a scoop in a little water and drink it and have that like with my meal, just to kind of get a boost of collagen if the meal I'm having, I feel like I could use
I
it.
gave a look because that doesn't taste very good.
It could depend on which one you're using, but I'm very macho, Nessa. I don't I can eat gross stuff.
Yeah, collagen by the scoopful in water, and ACV, just take it down.
Right.
um, so a lot of people do ask, like, with keto, can I drink protein shakes? And there are some pros and cons to that. I think some of the pros is if you are having trouble digesting protein, like we talked about earlier, then having it in a protein shake form is going to be easier for you to break down because you're not breaking down the food. Also, when I first started more low carb diets, it was an easier and more convenient grab and go type of breakfast. Just mix up your shake and go, take it with you. And you're just talking about collagen, which I think is important to get into your day. So having a protein shake every day can make it a little bit easier to get that collagen into your day. But there's definitely also some cons that come along with it. So one of the first cons is a lot of protein mixes contain way too much sugar or artificial sweeteners, which it's not a great idea to get either of those in a liquid form. Also, protein mixes contain a lot of other chemicals or junk ingredients. So if you look at the label, you probably can't pronounce half the stuff on there. And if you can't pronounce it, it probably shouldn't be going into your body. One big one that I think is protein shakes can keep you stuck in diet mentality, because a lot of people that aren't trying to lose weight or gain muscle, they're not really drinking protein shakes as meals. Like, a lot of people that are drinking them because they want to change their body in some form. And then also one that we've talked about is shakes can be higher in protein, which can result in gluconeogenesis for some people, especially if you're drinking mostly protein and you're not adding a lot of fat to that. Is there anything else that you could think of?
Yeah, and there's not, like if a person is low in nutrients and their digestion is having a problem, I do like to have them do some shakes where they can, they're using a good blender, like a blender that really allows those nutrients to be available to them, like the $600 kind of blenders that'll liquefy your iPhone in 10 seconds. Those kind of blenders. I'm a fan of those when the person needs easier access to nutrients and they're not able to break down food correctly. And I like to see people use this, especially on low carb. But when someone's main goal is to lose weight, I don't love the shakes, especially on keto. And the reason is that they're just not as satiating, and you kind of can rip through all those nutrients pretty quickly, and then the person's hungry and wanting to eat something else. Even if a person qualifies to fast, and we like to see people fast correctly. We haven't talked about that on an episode yet, but we'll do that soon. But I just see that they do better if they just fast instead of having that shake, because the shake kind of just makes them hungry sooner, you know? So when their goal is weight loss, I don't like to see a shake replace a meal. I'd rather see them eat real food.
Yeah, I've definitely done shakes for large parts of my dieting history, and I agree with you that I felt hungrier from those shakes.
Right. So there's benefits, but I I don't even have a go-to shake that I tell people to buy anymore, because you just, if it's delicious, it's not that good. You know what I mean? And that's what I ask people, like, oh, I make this shake. And I'm like, really? Is it delicious? Yeah. Okay. It's probably not that great for you. Because usually they're doing, too many sugars in there, or too many chemicals or sweeteners and those kind of things. Um, so again, you need to be gross if you really want it to be good, like my collagen only in water type of thing. No, you don't have to do that, but um,
I put collagen in my coffee. You can't taste it, especially when you mix it with hot liquids with a little bit of flavor. You can't really taste it.
right. Yeah. So it's, see, easy piece of cake. So if a person wants to put some nutrients or fats and stuff like that in their coffee, that can be good for some people. And even a shake, especially if a person is building muscle, stuff like that, they're wanting to add more accessible nutrients to their body, that's fine. I just hate to see people use it as a meal with the intention of losing fat.
And did you want to go back to, so we mentioned that the kinds that you want to look for is maybe like a good collagen protein, or if you can stomach it, the egg protein. Are there any on that list that you would absolutely avoid at all costs?
I really don't like whey. Whey is my least favorite. Casein is going to cause problems for some people. Some people will have egg issues too, but I tend to lean towards egg as my favorite of those. I'm looking over my computer because the list is down there. Um,
Okay.
Hemp is going to be a little bit pro-catabolic for some people and could be problematic, could be okay, could be even beneficial for others. But I really like to see collagen, or maybe like a beef gelatin type of powder, which is basically another form of accessing collagen as well. And so most of those are not going to be this flavored powder, put it in a water and make it delicious kind of thing. It's more of a easy to access nutrient that you're putting into something that you're drinking.
So I do add collagen to my children's juice. I give them low sugar juice, and that's actually the only reason I started juice at all, is because I wanted them to get some collagen in their day.
Uh-huh.
But since this is a keto podcast, obviously don't drink juice with any sugar.
Right. Yeah, a kid's going to need more sugars than an adult anyway. So, yeah, don't follow a toddler. We're not having a toddler episode here, right?
Yeah, it helps their health, but it
Right.
probably won't help yours.
Right, and they're not going to do the gross thing that I do of just putting collagen in
Nope.
water where you can drink it up.
A lot of my friends are actually surprised they'll even drink it in juice, but I started it from the start, so they don't know the difference.
Right, right.
So we've been talking about different forms of protein, and I think we've decided that collagen is definitely one of the better forms of protein to use. Why do you think that people should consume more collagen in our daily plan, and what are the benefits that comes along with consuming that?
Well, it's we'll talk about bone broth here in a second too, but that's kind of where the experience of our world comes from is because our grandparents, they ate everything. They didn't waste anything. So if there was a chicken carcass, it went into a pot and they made it into a soup or something like that. Things didn't get wasted. And when they did that and that chicken cooked in that soup for even days, that pulls all of those nutrients out that's in those bones and all those tissues that make that accessible to us, so that we can access those nutrients that are harder for us to get from other sources in our food today. So collagen is just one way to get some of those nutrients a little easier, that gives the body building blocks to not only build muscle, if that's something that you want to do, but guess what? You also want to build lungs. You want to have your lungs.
Yes.
So the body breaks itself down constantly, and we need these resources so that the body can build it back up correctly. And we were made as animals just to eat things, and you just eat it all. You don't be dainty and just nibble off the bone and then take a napkin. That's not what we were made for. So these things allow us to get the nutrients that like an animal would if a person ate like an animal. But you don't have to eat like an animal.
If you're dainty, you're not really nibbling off the bone. You're probably picking it off with your fingers and then eating it.
Okay, I wasn't sure how on
That's not dainty.
that one.
I think another benefit that a lot of people mention, so when people start keto, they might notice that their hair is falling out in sometimes large chunks. So I know a lot of people suggest to take more collagen in order to keep your hair attached to your head.
Right, and that can be a big one. And that happens because uh, you're not getting you're losing a lot of minerals and things that the hair is made of. It's made of protein and minerals. So if someone goes keto and they're starting to pee out too many minerals, but they're not taking steps to replenish that, and their digestion isn't working well in the first place to pull minerals out of their food, then they're going to have problems like that. So collagen is a way to cheat and get access to some of those nutrients a little bit easier.
Yes, and also for other things like great nail health and bone health and all those things.
Right. All that kind of goes back to the nutrients that your body needs to rebuild all of those things.
So a lot of people tell you to drink bone broth, like you were just talking about, for the nutrients. But what if someone didn't want to go through that process of making bone broth, and maybe they didn't want to buy the bone broth from the really expensive? It gets really expensive if you're buying the high quality stuff. So what's the difference between drinking bone broth or just adding collagen to your drinks?
I usually just tell people, don't be so lazy. Oh, no, that's not what I do. But the difference is that the collagen has a lot of nutrients in there, but collagen is just one of the things in bone broth. You're getting all of these other cofactors and other nutrients from those bones that you might not be able to access from just collagen. So it is more beneficial to do bone broth at least some of the time. You don't have to do it every day, but what if you made a batch of bone broth and you put it in ice cube container things, you made ice cubes out of it, so you just keep it in the freezer. And what if you had a mug full once every 2 or 3 weeks? You're giving yourself a big benefit from one Saturday afternoon work that you did, and you're extending that benefit for months. So that can be a big deal for some people, especially when you're talking about low blood pressure people who are low on those minerals and other nutrients in the first place. So that can be a big deal. But if someone just can't make that happen, or they don't have time, or I'm going to vote for being lazy kind of aspect of it, then you can get a lot of benefit from just doing collagen. And the effort that you have to put into it is like this, and you're done. So it's a lot of benefit from doing absolutely zero effort.
Yes. And also in our last podcast, we talked about bone broth as well. And so I am going to have that video to show you how to easily make bone broth from a whole chicken, where you're meal prepping the chicken, but you're also getting the benefit of bone broth as well. Because I know when I first started to learn about bone broth, I understood how to make it from beef bones. You just throw the bones in there with some other ingredients, but the chicken is a little bit more complicated. But once I learned how, it's actually pretty easy.
Right. And that way you can just say, oh, I'm not making it. I'm making dinner. I'm just making dinner. And then you accidentally have bone broth left over.
Yeah, so we should definitely include the link to that video in the show notes as well, in case anyone wants to go check that out.
Right. So show notes, you can find those at chatthefat.com/episode 5.
Okay. And so now we're talking about collagens, and there's a ton of different kinds out there. So of course, people are going to know which kind of collagen you use and what do you recommend everyone else use. Go ahead.
Go ahead. You have some favorites?
I do. Well, the first favorite I think I got as your recommendation, like way back when I first started taking collagen, because I didn't know what it was before and I didn't take it.
Right.
So the first kind that I started taking is called Great Lakes collagen. And why did you originally recommend that? What's great about it?
They were just a good source of clean collagen that we had some other colleagues recommend to us, and we tried it and really liked it a lot. And that was back when there weren't as many available. That was one of the first high quality ones, and so we went with that. But there's a lot of others now that are also from, grass-fed beef and those kind of things, which is really what we were looking for when we first started using it. That was a long, long time ago.
I like it because it's made in Grays Lake, Illinois, which I'm kind of from the area.
Oh, see, hometown.
Yeah. So that is definitely one of the ones that I use. That's the one that I give to my kids every day, and I use it a lot when I put it in coffee. Another good brand that I like is Perfect Keto, but I like their unflavored collagen just because I don't really use a lot of artificial sweeteners. So I always go for the unflavored. And the reason that I like theirs is because if you are taking too much collagen in like your coffee and you don't have some fat mixed into it, then you could actually go into or that would result in gluconeogenesis because you're absorbing that protein too quickly. So the Perfect Keto Collagen, actually, they mix MCT oil right into the powder to help negate that effect.
Right. And that can be cool too. And there's another one, I can't think of the name. I even talked to the people this week. The blue one, the collagen peptides, is in the blue container. Can you remember the company name? I've just
The
totally blanked.
Further Foods,
No, not that one. I totally
they're
blanked on
blue
it.
too.
Right. So blue things. Just use blue things. That's great. We'll put it in the show notes because I just blanked on the name right now. But that's one that's unflavored too that I like because it mixes very easily in water, and they use grass-fed and good stuff like that too.
But Further Foods is also the same boat. They actually sent me a sample jar, and they have all really good and quality ingredients, and it mixed really well into my drink. So I like that brand as well.
Right. And with things like this, the quality matters because you're pulling all of these hard to access nutrients from these animals when you're accessing the collagen. And if an animal was brought up on antibiotics and drugs and all these things, then all those things make their way into those tissues and into that collagen, and you don't want to have that. So this is one of those things where the quality really matters.
And I also wanted to say that if people wanted to support our podcast, we are affiliates for Perfect Keto. So we can include that link in the show notes if they wanted to get their unflavored collagen through our affiliate link. We would really appreciate that.
Okay, cool. I'll put that on there.
Okay. And then, so I know another question, obviously, if you are looking to dial in your protein macros, a lot of people don't really know where to start cutting out protein because it's been drilled in a lot of people's heads, like the base of your meal should be protein. So a lot of people are used to filling up their plates with a decent sized amount of protein, which on a keto diet could be too much. I do have some tips that can help people actually rein in their protein macros. So the first tip that I would say is to focus on higher fat options like a higher fat ground beef or steak over meals like maybe chicken or turkey, which are lower in fat. And so their portions might be a little bit higher in protein. And I would say that if you are eating meats like chicken or turkey, that you should limit those to only once per day. And when you are eating meats, the higher protein meats especially, you just want to focus on eating smaller portions of the lean meats. And you also want to make sure that you are adding extra fat to lean meats. So things like chicken or turkey, I like to just add butter on them. They actually taste really good like that.
Right? It's yum.
It is really good. I've actually always added butter to turkey, but chicken is new. I usually add a lot of butter and a lot of garlic to my chicken. So something else that people can try if they're trying to rein in their protein macros is they can try more of a 2-meal-a-day approach. So, with keto, a lot of times you stay fuller longer. And so maybe instead of eating 3 big meals per day, you're only eating 2 meals. And that way you'll have less opportunity to eat as much protein because you're skipping an entire meal. And, if you do get hungry on that 2-meal per day approach, you can still fill in the hunger blanks with things like fat bombs or maybe even a bulletproof coffee, which I personally, when I drink bulletproof coffee, I also add collagen, but it's just as easy to leave that out if you feel like you're getting too much protein into your day. And so another thing, if you prefer 3 meals each day, you could also figure out a few meals that are higher in fat and lower in protein that maybe you really love. And you can just rotate those at least once per day. So that way you have at least one meal that is lower in protein. And then maybe your other meal, your other 2 meals can be a little bit higher. So you can learn to balance it out that way as well.
Yeah, we talked about a lot of people are used to, revolving their meal around protein, and I still use protein as the centerpiece of my meal. I kind of focus everything around what the protein is going to be. I just make it a much smaller serving than I used to be, which is kind of great too, because we used to get like ribeyes and we would kill this huge ribeye that was like the size of a television. And now I can still get those ribeyes like that, but it lasts me like the whole week because I'm just having little slivers. And when your keto is ketoing correctly, you just don't need as much of that. And if you're having extra fats with that meal, you'll find that you're just as satiated, but you don't have to sit there going, holy mackerel, I just ate a cow.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are afraid to try keto because they're scared they are going to end up spending more money on real food. But when you look at it like that, you're actually spending less money because you're not eating as much meat as you did before.
Yeah, my grocery bill has absolutely 100% dropped.
Now, I think to go along with that, the last one that I talked about was finding some meals that are maybe higher in fat and lower in protein. Is we have a download that you can get this week that lists our 5 favorite lower protein meals. So these are some meals that you can cycle in throughout your week and substitute for some of your higher protein favorites in order to keep your protein macros reined down throughout the week.
Cool. And some of those are recipes that we used in the keto cooking course.
Yeah, so we have the Keto Cooking Decoded course, and it's a great course with a lot of education, but we also have a lot of cooking demos. So if you get the list and you have absolutely no idea what you're doing in the kitchen, we definitely have demos throughout the course showing you exactly the way that we cook those.
And I was surprised at how beneficial the cooking courses were, because we have one for keto, one for low carb, because the fact is, if you can't make food at home, if you're counting on things that you're getting at a store or a restaurant, it's really difficult to eat well and correct, especially on keto, because they don't have keto drive-through. It's just we're not there yet. Stick around, but being able to cook for yourself is a huge thing.
Yeah, when I first started, I had no idea how to cook, like really at all. And it was a lot harder to stay low carb and keto because not only are there not as many options, but the options I did find, they didn't really keep me satisfied because you're not getting as high quality as nutrients as maybe like from a burger from the drive-through as a grass-fed burger that you can make at home. So it definitely filled me up a lot more and made me feel a lot better.
Right.
So
Cool.
that
So
was
you can
important.
get that. You can get that free download on the show notes page at chatthefat.com/episode 5.
All right. So I think that really is everything we have to say about protein, but we do have a listener question. And this is from Monique from Interlaken, Switzerland. I don't know if I said that right.
I think that might be too far away for us to answer this question.
But Monique wants to know, what are some of your favorite sources of protein for vegetarians or vegans?
Mine I think is ribs, maybe barbecue ribs.
They do
That's
have
not.
tofu ribs, but I don't
Yeah,
think
that's not
that's what you're
good.
talking about.
So I might not make any friends with this one, but I'm allowed to talk like this because I was vegan for 2 years and I suffered through that. I paid my dues. Um, so it's really hard uh, to do keto and vegan when you're trying to get enough protein or good protein sources, because most of the beneficial protein sources that they talk about so much, like lentils or chickpeas and things like that, a lot of them are higher in carbs, and the only really one that's not is tofu and soy, fake processed meat substitute. That's not real food things. And I'm really not a fan of soy whatsoever, and I've seen people improve major health issues just by removing soy. just because it can be so estrogenic, and uh, that can create a lot of problems, especially for women, and especially for women who have low resources already, and their body's already cranking up estrogen levels to because the body's freaking out about not having enough nutrients to function correctly. Um, so if you're trying to do vegan or vegetarian and do keto and make sure you're getting good sources of protein, you're asking for a lot of things that just don't mix together as well. So you can still do it, just know that it's going to be harder and you may not get the highest quality of things. And it depends on what your reasoning is. Because if your reasoning is, I'm a vegetarian because I think that's the healthiest thing to do, then you can cheat and use some supplements that might have, beef gelatin in it, something that's not, vegan or vegetarian at all. But if you're vegan or vegetarian because of beliefs or, religion or those kind of things, then you're not going to use those kind of items in your quote unquote vegan diet. I don't know. Do you have any that you're finding vegans do well with as far as protein sources?
So I have had some people come to me and ask for help, and they want to learn how to do keto, but then they say they're vegan or vegetarian. And, I let them know that it is possible. There are books out there that can help them, but that's definitely not my area of expertise. A lot of protein I could think of maybe comes from like dairy or nuts, things like that. But those are also the same foods that a lot of people might have issues with.
Right. That was one thing I wanted to say is nut butters could be a big one, but like I don't do well on nut butters anymore because when I was vegan, that's all I ate. And I think I created a sensitivity by doing that while my digestion was poor, because that's when I went vegan because my digestion was trashed. Um, so you might want to go to kickitnaturally.com and listen to our episode about vegan versus paleo, because we talk about a lot of the pros and cons and ways that you can thrive while doing vegan, kind of doing the best that you can, kind of thing.
Okay. And so now, while we are on a podcast about protein, we wanted to do a product review. So we thought the perfect product to review this week was the protein, the collagen protein that we talked about, the Great Lakes collagen protein. So if you're on YouTube, you can see I'm holding up a can. It's the green can. A lot of people get confused. Do they want the green or the red? But the green dissolves in hot and cold water. But more specifically, today we were going to be talking about these little packets that they sell on Amazon, but they also sell them on Thrive Market.
Yeah. So, and that's great because a lot of people are on the go and they need access to something that's easy just to dump in some water and, or, some kind of drink to get it down.
Yeah. And so I actually, I had the big can, I, keep it at home, but a lot of times I was getting coffee to go. And so I would empty it out into a little baggie. And obviously that can get a little messy, especially if you're carrying it around in your purse.
Right.
Not only that, like when I show up to Starbucks with my little baggie of white substance, I felt like I was getting weird looks.
Right. You were probably getting some phone calls and people
Yeah.
wanting to come check you out. You don't want to go through airport security or that kind of stuff. So this can make it easier. And it's the same company we were talking about before that makes the high quality collagen that we like. So that's nice when companies that have been around for a while say, hey, let's make it convenient. Why not do this?
Yeah. And so, so I found these convenient packs on Thrive Market, and I love Thrive Market because you actually end up saving so much money. So I'm big into Amazon. We have the subscribe and save and the Prime delivery. So we get free delivery on anything anyway. But actually, this collagen was one of the reasons that I started using Thrive Market, because I was buying the bigger cans on Amazon, and they were about $24.99 per bigger can. And so I switched over to Thrive because we go through so much collagen, and it's only $19.99 per can. Yeah. So obviously saving $5 a can. We're buying a lot each month, so those savings add up pretty quickly. And before we did the podcast, I just looked, and these packets are also available on Amazon. So if you don't have a Thrive membership, You can get a 20 pack for $24.99 on Amazon, but if you go to Thrive, you're going to save money and get that same 20 pack for only $18.99. So if you're a Thrive member, it's definitely worth the savings to go over to Thrive. If you're not on Thrive yet, they are another affiliate for ours, so we'll put our affiliate link in the show notes, and you can definitely sign up and save a lot of money on collagen if you use it as much as we do, and they have a ton of other keto products on Thrive as well.
I think if you sign up through the link, you actually get a discount on your first order or something like that. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, I think you save like 20% off your first order, so definitely worth it.
Okay, so another product, and we were nice about that product. That's two, I think, that we've been nice about.
I know. I don't know if I can be mean about any product.
I'll work it out. I've seen some that I would love to be mean about.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we did a show.
Yes, we did.
Okay, we did it all. Do you remember what we're talking about next week?
I want to say I do. Hold on. Let me look. We are talking about the difference between low carb and keto next week.
Okay, that'll be a good one. Okay, so come back next week and you can check out the show notes for anything that we talked about at chatthefat.com/episode 5. And we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Whether you're brand new to keto or just looking to move past roadblocks, join us for our next Troubleshooting Keto Master Workshop. Go to chatthefat.com/workshop to find upcoming dates and register for this totally free event. You just might find your missing piece of the puzzle. Until then, we'll see you next week on Chat the Fat.